Hi guys, how you going? I'm very excited because this is actually the first time in my life that I've officially had a Madonna mic on. So when I get excited, I tend to move around a little bit too much. So to try and prevent that, I'm just going to sit down here. Thank you, Max. You can come to all my parties and do that. I'll really appreciate it. So yeah, my name is Lauren. And I'm going to try and answer the question about what the fuck is going to happen after wearables. But to kick off, I'm going to get started to try and explain a little bit about why I'm here today. So this does literally explain why I am here today, but I hope it goes some way to tell you a little bit about what motivates me as a designer. Now, I was inspired to start off my kind of journey on product design by my late grandfather. He wasn't a product designer, and he wouldn't have even considered himself to be a creative. Now, in fact, he was a barber and owned a few salons in and around the area that I'm from. Now, in the 50s and 60s Britain, after a gentleman had gone to the barber on a Saturday morning to have his short back and sides, upon paying the receptionist for his haircut, he would be asked if he would like something for the weekend, sir. Yeah, you guessed it, right? Thinly veiled. But this is how we went about buying contraception. Now, in most family businesses, the Saturday morning girl, as was the case with my grandfather's business, was in fact his daughter, my 12-year-old adolescent mother. Now, this system of purchase was socially accepted. It was considered to be completely fine as a way of going about getting this product. But to my grandfather, he thought, hang on one second, this is very, very awkward. There needs to be something that is more accessible, that men don't have to go through this unnecessary embarrassment in order to get this product that they need. What he had inadvertently done there is, and it does tend to happen that innovation occurs to those closest to the problem, but he had identified an issue within an established system. And he had outlined a possible future vision. So what did Granda do? Well, he headed to the garage, right? And he prototyped, and he tried to come up with different ways and different means that he could deliver a better end result and a better end experience. Now, all the decisions that he was making along that process were being determined and considered due to this identified problem and this potential future vision. Now, don't get excited, right? Because sadly, this doesn't mean that I end up as the Paris Hilton of the condom vending machine world, which is a sad fact to share with you today. But the ending of this story really isn't important, because what it expresses is that when we use cutting-edge technology to solve what are gaps and what are problems, we can come up with better experiences than we ever imagined. So, where is this going? Well, even if I don't get there by the end, at least I'll have shared something that I'm very proud about my grandfather with a few more people than just at my dinner tables. So wearables, right? What comes next? Everything at this time, at this moment, is really focusing on wearable technology. The CES coverage this year, journalists were actually really shocked at how many stands were being devoted to wearable technology. They actually didn't foresee it. All you've got to do right now is Google that term, and you will be overwhelmed by a deluge of interesting content. Some of it's a bit annoying. I've read a lot in preparation to today, but there are some really good questions being asked out there. What is wearable technology? That's what most people asked me when I said I was coming today to do this. What does it mean? Is it just a fad? Is it going to stick around? Is it going to make a difference? What will it mean for us as creatives? How's our job going to change? And as it's been so long coming, is 2016 really seriously going to be its year? One of the things that I've noticed, right, is a lot of this rhetoric that is going on right now seems to be quite concentrated around the physical product, how it fits with me, how I wear it. Now, as a designer and somebody who has come from the land of product design, I don't discount that this is a very, very important part of the puzzle, and one that which we cannot forget. But the gadget the gadget isn't the focus. It is the ability to seamlessly wear technology which links us to cloud-based processing, storage, and have the capacity to access and achieve things in ways in which we've never been able to do before. I think if we focus a little bit too much on this endpoint, we do potentially miss the opportunity of looking at the bigger picture, right? And taking hold of the full advantage that's in front of us. Now, I know this is a little bit corny, but I couldn't come up with a better idea of a slide. So I felt like I needed a big iceberg, right? Because these early guises of wearable technologies that we have right now, you know, the Fitbits, the watches, the tattoos, even the latest stuff coming out, the earbuds, so to speak, these are only the tip of the iceberg. And when we want to consider the future of wearables, we need to start looking under the surface. We need to be looking at the wider system. We need to be talking about what that broader connected ecosystem is, because that is far more interesting. So, one of the things that's kind of good to remember, though, is that this first guise of wearable technology, this is signifying the beginning of the dissolving of our devices. It is the first frontier that is going to mean that we and our ways and behaviors of interfacing with the internet are about to completely change. This is the third wave of computing. This is a whole new palette. This is a whole new set of colors. This is a whole new different set of patterns, most of which haven't even been imagined, let alone defined. The concept within this, of these 4 breakpoints, of which I spend most of my day-to-day life thinking about and designing to, are just going to be like, well, there's a lot more than 4 now. And the way in which that we are currently building our digital products and services is no longer going to apply in this new sphere. This new multi-layered, sensor-led ecosystem will decentralize the screen. And it will bring about a much more 3D landscape where our interaction dictionaries are going to expand and expand and expand. We already have the first introduction of audio, but this is going to explore and creep into other areas. And then you've got touch, and then you've got motion, and then you've got thought, expression. What opportunity this gives us, this new sensor-led wearable technology, is to finally have the tools on hand to design, define, create, and compose truly humanized experiences through and powered by technology. So far, right, wearables has fallen into 2 camps. We have those which collect the data, you know, your Fitbits, your heart tracking, your temperature socks, etc., and those which are trying to deliver us data in opportune moments. So that's what the premise of Google Glass was, so that I can look at an expressionism painting and really understand what it's all about. Now, as the sensor-led wearable technology category expands and matures, these 2 camps are going to start to blend. And when they start to blend, this is when it's going to get not only just more interesting, right? It's going to become more useful, but it's going to become a whole heap more scary. This is when I will be able, as an individual, to track, monitor, send, consume, understand, digest information just about myself that I've never been able to do before. But in that very same moment, I will be able to understand stuff about you and your senses on a micro level and on a macro level. So I'll be able to understand that Mr. Joe Blogs up the back actually has a little question, I'm talking a little fast or I'm not making sense, and maybe address it in real time in my talk. It means that tonight, at the opening drinks, when you walk up to me, I would be able to understand your name, what you do, where you're from, that yesterday was your birthday, that actually pretty tired today, right, because you woke up and had 12 restless moments last night between your 6.2 hours sleep. but actually that we work in a similar field and we've got something in common that we've both been researching online, and we should talk about that in this moment and make the most out of it. As you approach me, you will find out that I was absolutely terrified about doing this talk today. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to get to the end in the time that I have, and that my favorite beverage is actually Pinot Noir from the Mornington Peninsula. Useful and incredibly scary. So with this fragmentation, this new spectrum, propelled by all these new devices and how they interact, you kind of got to get thinking, right? These monoliths that we currently live in, these fortresses that have been created by Google, Apple, Microsoft, are they going to be able to continue? Currently, these continents that they've created, producers need to ask to step into. If I want to have one of my applications or products or services live in that sphere, I need to seek permission. And users, we need to go in and go, okay, well, what's your language? Let me find out what your rules are. And they've all got their different nuances. But in a world that's only going to get more complex, how is this going to be affected? Really, are we going to have to just choose one? Because that kind of feels a little nuts, right? You put your book in and that's it, you're there. Or is it time for something completely radically different? And I'm not just talking about an open platform, because that seems far too obvious. What about something that will connect up these different spectrums in ways that we've not seen before? So, what does this mean for us, right, as creatives? Well, I don't know about you, but this is a time where everything seems to be moving pretty fast. Considering I went to art school about 13 years ago to make chairs, it's kind of interesting that I'm now working entirely in digital innovation, and couldn't imagine making a chair, and I really wasn't very good at it anyway. But I do feel that at this moment where we're rushing so quickly, it's so hard to get good at something, because just at the time that you're getting good at something, there's something new and you need to go and learn that. I think in this circumstance, any psychologist would probably admit it's right to feel anxious. Because you see, up until now, as creatives, right, we've had quite a lot of control about where the content and experience we are producing is going to be consumed. We've known the platform that we're dealing with. We have known what that spectrum's going to look like. We have been able to understand the patterns. We've mastered those patterns. But that's all about to completely change, right? We're no longer going to have or going to be able to have the foresight of where the experiences and content that we're producing may or may not be consumed. The control is about to go. And this means that we're going to have to become incredibly adaptable in terms of what it is that we're creating and kind of let go of these devices. But whilst this sounds incredibly scary, please don't worry, because this journey of reflection and preparation for today really kind of brought this front to mind. And this is the reason why I shared the story about my granddad, because even more so now than ever before, in this complex ecosystem that we're about to arrive at, the fundamentals of a good product solution will stand true. And we need to make sure that we are really harnessing them. So just to go over them and kind of link them back to what I think their role will be in wearables, I'll go through the 3 core ingredients. Now, ingredient number 1, it's probably no surprise to anyone here, but it's purpose. We all know that the best products and services have the most well-defined and articulated use cases. We knew exactly how to use this before it came out. It changed the world because the use case outweighed the benefit, and we were prepared to make the subsequent changes to get this on board. That was very different, it's playing, in comparison to the iPad. We had to be taught through advertising how this may fit into our lives. 6 years down the track, this has not made the same ripple effect. And for the large part, I don't know about you, but we have a few of them sitting in drawers in my house. They haven't made their way into our ecosystem in the same way as a smartphone. So when we think about wearable devices, the most prolific kind of use cases at this moment in time are those in the health spectrum. And the purposes are really quite strong. We get it, right? It tracks my heart, or it monitors my step count every day, and that's cool. The last quarter of last year, 4.5 million units were sold from Fitbit. That's insane. That's brilliant. However, The stats are showing that after 6 months, people who had Fitbits aren't using them anymore. So that means there's a lot of them sitting in drawers. So it kind of feels like, well, maybe the use case isn't fully baked. So you think, well, okay, if it's too niche, maybe we need to expand it and think a bit wider. Well, you could look at the Apple Watch, for example. That is delivering many, many use cases, mirroring many different functionalities that the smartphone can do. But still, there is a big question around whether it is actually providing a better way of interfacing with that information. Because it's not about making everything wearable, because everything can be wearable. It is about recognizing what should be wearable, because actually, if you do it in any other way, it just won't be as good. The killer use case for wearable technology has not been defined yet, but we need to come back to those core principles and ask ourselves, why are we using this type of tech to deliver this experience, and how will it prove to be better than an alternative? We need to argue with ourselves about why it doesn't need to be wearable before we rush to make it wearable. The second ingredient is acceptance. You can have a killer instinct, absolutely, but we all know that if the market is not ready or the leap is too much, then people won't use it. I don't know if you guys got this over here in Australia. This is Dom Joly. He was a comedian in the early noughties. He had a skit show in 2002 where he would walk into public places with a very large foam 3210 Nokia. It would ring very loudly and obnoxiously, and he would answer it very loudly and obnoxiously. Now, why was this considered comedy? Well, because for the longest time, the idea of me taking away from this moment where I'm in this discourse with you or with you, and actually just looking at my phone or answering my phone, that was really, really rude, right? Oh, it's today, and there's a lot of people doing that here, and it's okay, I don't think you're rude, it's fine, you're on your computer and I'm talking, it's fine. Because we've changed. We now let each other multitask. We have moved forward from that. And I know there's probably a few of you back there going, well, actually, you know what, I think it's still rather rude to do that. Well, it doesn't really matter, because there are a whole generation of millennials out there for whom this is the baseline. There wasn't anything before. So as wearable technology continues to become more and more invisible to the naked eye, because that is what's going to happen, it's what we need to happen, we're going to come across lots and lots and lots of these issues around social discourse and convention. Take, for example, the ones which we know. Looking at your watch has indicated for the longest time that you're a little bit bored of this conversation. And the Apple Watch is having to grapple with that. But wearable technology offers us the opportunity to personalize the way that we interact with our devices and systems and services. So that means that in a social context, I may not know what gestures you make. So what issues is that going to arise? And it's not just about the social, actual convention that I'm talking about here. It's also about the context. Because even though right now I could walk into a changing room with my mobile phone surreptitiously and record you, I wouldn't, because that would be a bit weird, and I don't advise anyone to go do it. When Apple brought around Google Glass, they had so much trouble with the fact that they had this perennial recording device right here where people could see. And this changing room use case was so much of an issue. They actually put into the SDK that you couldn't do facial recognition. That's one of the strongest use cases, so it's quite interesting. Now, with great power comes great responsibility. And yes, I am fully aware that this isn't Spider-Man, but Henry Cavill's hotter, and he's still a superhero. So we'll go with that. As we are designing a much broader than ever before experience, we are going to need to be central to this discourse about what is appropriate for wearable technology and what is not. In this, we're going to have to be incredibly responsible designers. And this is kind of a little bit like accessible design, but on steroids, because it's just going to keep going up and up. The delicacy and inclusivity of how we use these new lexicons is going to increasingly affect whether a product succeeds and whether it fails. we are going to have to get very used to designing in acceptance cycles, because we're going to have to bring society along with us. And finally, the third is technology. It's incredibly hard to design a good experience. It's really rare to be able to design one that you can't live without. Wearable technology is in its infancy. It's right at the beginning. It is only as these sensors become more sophisticated will they open more doors for us. In Wired World's 2016 article, Eve Bahar stated that it is design's responsibility, and that of designers, to ensure that this technology and the way that it is applied is both intuitive, empowering, and experiential. We need to make sure that whilst we are able to deliver far more sensors and wear far more sensors and do more useful things with far more sensor-led systems, that this technology is in fact not starting to get in the way. And part of this is because we don't want people to look like Christmas trees, and we don't want to make them look like cyborgs earlier. Because what we have seen by this first guise of wearable technology is that people are pushing back when things don't feel human enough. It is our job to make sure that they do feel human enough. And just because the screens are going to be decentralized, this won't impact the amount of information that we are actually consuming. No, not at all. It will do the opposite. It will mean we can consume way more and all the time. So it's our job, again, to make sure that you can actually disconnect from this. Because if not, and I'm really hoping that wearable technology can save us from chair death, because sitting is the new smoking. But let's not invent another problem. Essentially, we need to make sure that the technology that we're using isn't getting in the way of what needs to take center stage, and that is the experience that we are trying to deliver. So, in this age of experimentation, tell you the truth, I've probably read about 200 or 300 articles and listened to so many podcasts in prep for today, and I have no idea where this is going to go, and I've heard a few other people say the same, so I feel validated in that. But we need to come back to these basics and keep them in mind, and as part of that, we also need to start experimenting. We already have this first guise of wearables. We can already see patterns, we can already see flaws, we can already start to question the purpose, the acceptance, and the technology. And we can start to push this forward further, quicker and faster, more than ever before. This is going to be one hell of a roller coaster. And whilst in my granddad's age, the killer use case, the solution, the innovation was putting a steel metal box on a wall, our systems and services, the solutions that we're going to design are going to be far more complex, but they need to be that simple. And I look forward to seeing you along on the ride. Thank you very much.